I'm Ginevra Ralph. Oh, we've got way more exciting people. I promise. I'm Ginevra Ralph, and on behalf of the board and the staff of the John G. Shedd Institute for the Arts and our presenting sponsor, the Eye Center, Dr. John Haynes and Dr. Kent Karen, I am just so thrilled to welcome you tonight. I'm going to talk some more after I let my lovely partner here say some words of welcome for you, but it's my great pleasure to give you the chair of our Hearing Loop Lane County Committee, and good friend, good colleague, and incredible woman, Sue Pritchard.
I originally thought I was going to introduce her and tell you that she is the real force behind everything we're doing here, so I'm going to say that right in the beginning. But on behalf of the Shedd Institute's Loop Lane County Committee, I want to welcome you tonight. Thank you very much for coming. We are so happy and honored to be able to provide these free events to raise awareness about this invisible disability called hearing loss. If you have hearing loss, or you know anybody who has hearing loss, you know that it has significant, potentially negative impacts on quality of life. We want to bend that curve and help the hard of hearing people hear better in more places and in more conditions. None of the work that we are doing would be possible without the incredibly complete and passionate dedication of Ginevra and Jim Ralph and the entire staff at the Shedd. They are so amazing in terms of their commitment to affording full accessibility to everybody with every disability. Their example is spreading, building by building throughout the community, resulting in loops being put in places all over Lane County that have not been there before. And we're very proud of that work and very happy that we've been able to ride on the coattails of the Shedd. When I went in for my numerous hearing tests over the last 26 years and came out each time with depressingly worse results, I never thought that I would ever be able to have something potentially wonderful happen out of it. What could be frustrating and debilitating and humiliating and embarrassing has turned into an incredibly fun experience. Working with this committee and with the Shedd has been life-changing for me. It's been a barrel of fun, and I am so proud of the work that we've been able to do and really happy that you're all here to share that with us tonight. Thank you very much.
So it has been great fun, and so a few more thanks to people that directly helped tonight. First of all, thanks to Hugh and Sue Pritchard for sponsoring tonight, along with some other help. Thank you, Sue. This beautiful green tape has a purpose. It's to let you know that we have put a temporary loop on the stage because everybody, two of us, will be not using the hearing loop. Everybody else will be using the hearing loop that is on the stage, as well as you in the audience, for those of you who have your telecoil activated. Speaking of which, I want to thank another loop member. Oh, that was Alan Antilla and Mike Sanders who put this in. Another loop committee member is Arnie Goodman from Goodman Hearing, and he was checking people's telecoils out in the lobby. Now, there's a message in your program that if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, go see your specialist, and we'll be talking about it afterwards a little bit more. But as Sue said, for people that hearing loops make a difference, it can be life-changing. Tonight's kind of an oddball performance, if you will. It's kind of a mishmash, and I will say it's got lower production values than anything else we've probably done at the Shedd, except for maybe the magical Moomba sometimes. But I want, our presenters and performers are all sitting in the audience because I want them to hear each other, so there will be some coming and going. And it is a conversation, so it's informal. This is your living room tonight, and we really hope you will participate at the end. We'll have a question and answer session. Tonight came about because we wrote an absolutely brilliant grant to the Oregon Tourism Council. And it was to celebrate how accessible the tourism was coming along in Lane County and southern Willamette Valley. And part of the grant was to add hearing loops and other assistive devices in cultural centers around the Cascade Raptor Center, the theaters, you name it, things that tourists want to go to. And we were going to hire a pair of writers to come up with a bunch of material to submit to travel magazines, airplane magazines, AAA, about how accessible Eugene and Lane County was, and you ought to come and visit us. And then we were going to put together this night, Traveling with Hearing Loss, with 3 of the most amazing speakers on the subject that you will hear, and local artists and presenters, all of whom are using the loop, except for Jincy. We'll set that up right away. And it didn't get funded. But we went ahead and did almost all of that anyway, especially tonight. So you are going to hear 3 of my favorite people in the whole world. And we are going to start off with Canadian comedienne talking about traveling and what fun it is to travel with hearing loss. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing about this whole show was getting her out of Canada and back in. So please welcome Gael Hannan.
Hey. So, traveling from place to place is a pleasure, especially if you can hear. If you can hear the public address announcement saying that your flight is about to leave and you are not on it. If you can hear that your row is being boarded onto the plane now. If you can hear any announcement while you're in the air. If you can hear the hotel fire alarm at 2 in the morning when you are fast asleep. If you can hear your child in the back seat while you're driving, or if you can hear the driver while you're in the back seat. If you can hear the front desk manager explaining to you that he does not have a reservation for you. If you can hear in Italy, the audiologist telling you that your hearing aid is dead. Yes, traveling is a pleasure, but when hearing loss is present, there's more stress along for the ride. Now, I have hearing loss. I used to say, I'm hard of hearing, but I don't really like that term much anymore. I mean, hard of hearing. But I do use a short form. You know, we use acronyms for everything. And the acronym for hard of hearing is HOH. And it's fine when you look at it on paper, I'm HOH. But when you say it out loud, I'm a hoe. I'm a hoe. Yes, I am a traveler with hearing loss. And when I'm traveling with hearing loss, I am a hoe on the road. Now, So us hoes, when we travel, we can get a bit nervous about some of the things like I just mentioned. But, I mean, let's face it, everyone, even hearing people, that's what we call you people who aren't deaf or hard of hearing people. And we say it with love and respect and a lot of envy at times. Yeah. So, but even hearing, everyone has some anxiety when they're traveling. But for us hoes, let me tell you, when we get nervous on the road, we get in trouble, right? I mean, I am telling you that when we get nervous, we can lose up to like 10 decibels of hearing. And don't ask me for a source for that stat. I am just telling you the hearing goes down when you're talking to a nice United States Customs officer who's staring you in the eye and very politely trying to figure out if you're lying. But he speaks more clearly than most people in the airport. I mean, those people in the security, they don't even look you in the eye. And when you're trying to find out where to go because there's no signs anywhere, and you ask some random person who has a mask, and you say, could you tell me where to go to such and such? And they go, no, sir. You're here, and then he won't. Huh? That's what our life is like now. And that's why people with hearing loss quite often do not ask for directions, because we know we're not going to hear what they tell us. So it stands to reason that us hoes, we probably get more lost more often than hearing people. And no, I have no statistics for that either. I am just basing it on years of experience of not hearing public address announcements, of trying to understand hearing people who don't hear as well as they think, or maybe they don't think as well as they hear. Whatever, it all adds up to communication breakdown. And there are solutions. There are solutions. We shouldn't have to go through this. I mean, think of it. Anything that is audible should also be made visible, like signage. Signage everywhere, written information, clear masks so we can see what people are saying. Loops. You're going to hear loops a lot tonight. Why not have loops everywhere where I need to talk to people? And travel professionals at all points along the journey to understand the needs of people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And also, hoes. We need to know what we need. And we have to know that it's okay to ask for it. We have the right to ask for help, and then we should ask for it. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of a typical journey, airports and flying and being in the hotel. So I'm at the airport, and I'm getting my boarding pass from the kiosk. And it's great. I can understand everything because it's written in my language and it tells me what to do, even when I'm making mistakes. And that's the last I'm going to understand something very well on this trip, I know. I get my boarding pass, go through security, and I could do a whole evening just on the adventures of a deaf, hard of hearing person going through security. Anyway, first thing I do after getting through security, I go up to my gate, the counter, and I put down my boarding pass, and I say, "Hi, that's me, and I have really profound hearing loss, and I don't hear public announcements. I don't understand what you're saying. Could you help me, please?" And after a slight moment of panic, they go, or probably because they're busy, they go, "Oh, okay, fine. Why don't you sit over there, and we can board you early." And I look surprised and grateful, as if that wasn't the very thing I was aiming for in the first place. So now over there is the area where people who have need some help boarding, the area. So we're talking the elderly, the infirm, the guy with 2 walking casts and a wheelchair, and me. And I sit down in the seat, big wheelchair emblazoned all over it. And as soon as I sit down, I can feel like 10 pairs of eyes laser beaming into my back. The other people, the people who aren't sitting here. And they're like, "Why is she sitting there? She can walk, she can talk, she's looking at her phone. I mean, what's she doing there?" What I'm doing there is thanking my lucky stars that me and my friends here were going down first. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and I keep my eyes directly on that counter, waiting for the call to board. And once a very, very caring staff person came over, knelt down beside me very confidentially, and she said, "I want to make sure you have everything you need. Is there anything else I can get you? A Braille card?" So while I'm gathering my words, trying to think of what I'm going to say, inside I'm going, "Seriously? We're doing this? A Braille card? Am I the first hard of hearing deaf person you've ever had come through here? And while I'm at it, all you other people, what are you staring at? This is what hearing loss looks like. We walk, we talk. Most of us, some of us. So just relax, you'll be boarding soon. Although I'm going first." So another time, another staffer came over, and I thought she was going to wave me, and she did. She made it as big as possible. She went, So I walk up, she checks me in, she takes my elbow, and she walks me down the gangplank. There were no wheelchairs, but I had a personal assistant. I kid you not. She hands me off to the flight attendant on the plane. Now, every flight that I get on, I say to the flight attendant, I say, I'm sitting there, I have profound hearing loss, I do not hear any announcements, and I know you don't have them captioned on the little screens. So, you need to tell me the important stuff. I do not want to know what our cruising altitude is. I don't care. I do not want to know or need to know the temperature in Eugene. What you will come to tell me is the important stuff, like brace yourself, we're going down. That's all I need to know. Now, the chair where I'm sitting is never the exit row. We never get the extra space, right? There is a special type of hell for hard of hearing people who sit in the exit row. I mean, why would I want to? Why would I want to stress that we're going down and I'm trying to figure out how to get the hatch open and people are yelling at me and I'm going, pardon? Pardon? No, I do not do exit rows unless I'm traveling with the hearing husband who is 6'7" and we need that extra room. So, I get to Eugene. What's next? Hotels. I love hotels. I love hotels. Every new hotel I go to, I think, what's this one going to be like? And it's always, there's a bed, there's a desk, there's a bathroom, but that's fine. That's great. But if you travel alone a lot, like I do, and if you have hearing loss, like I do, there are some extra safety and security things you need to think about. Namely, the big question, to bolt or not to bolt, the security bolt. If you put the security bolt on before you go to bed, if there's an emergency, the good guys are going to have a really tough time getting to you and breaking that door down. But if you don't put the bolt on, the bad guys are going to get in no time at all. Now, regardless who walks into your hotel room, for whatever reason, when they walk through that door and you're asleep, you are not going to hear it. Nothing, nada, zilch. Now, the good guys will turn the light on and flick it so you wake up. But guess what? The bad guys may do it too, just so they can check out whether this is something they want to continue with in your room. Now, the best thing to do is to have a roommate, but that's not always possible. But my friend Myrtle and I, Myrtle from Newfoundland, we traveled to a lot of hearing loss conferences together. And anybody who tried to break into our room, into Myrtle and my room, was in big trouble. There was nobody that Myrtle and I couldn't handle, as long as they were under 5 feet tall and weighed less than 100 pounds. And as long as they faced us when they were talking to us and spoke clearly. As long as they were willing to repeat themselves. Some bad guys aren't, but you never know. Or, this is the tough one, saying, hold on just a second, I need to put in my hearing aid and my cochlear implant. Now, the bad guys don't want to wait for you to do that, and the good guys don't. There's a fire going on. They want to take you to safety. Personally, I leave the door unbolted. So, just in case you were thinking breaking into my room, I'm staying at the Ramada. I'm not, actually, but you have to figure that out. So, what you need to do, hoes of the world, when you check into a hotel, you need to self-identify. Number one rule for people with hearing loss, let people know. And you might get a nice young person at the front desk, very well trained, but maybe not so much in dealing with people like us. So, hi, Gael Hannan checking in. Hello, Mrs. Hannan, here for 3 nights. Excuse me, Travis, would you mind speaking up? I have hearing loss. No problem, Mrs. Hannan. Certainly happy to do that for you. Travis, could you also face me? No problem, Mrs. Hannan. Travis, did you make a note that I have hearing loss? Done. Is there anything else we can do for you today, Mrs. Hannan? Yes, could you tell me what your procedure is in case of an emergency? Yes, we have a fire alarm, very loud, and we also offer here at the Ramada a door-to-door evacuation service. I said, Travis, that is very nice, but here's the thing. I am not going to hear that alarm, and I am definitely not going to hear someone knocking at the door. So instead of wasting important time waiting for me to come to the door, which ain't gonna happen, here's what you're gonna do, Travis. You are going to send the biggest, the strongest, and most handsome firefighter to my room first and carry me off to safety. Oh, Mrs. Hannan, you're so funny. I am not kidding, Travis. Fine. Travis and I work it out. I'm up in my hotel room. Been traveling all day. You're hungry. You're hungry, but you don't want to go down to the hotel restaurant. It's noisy. And because you're a hoe, you do not want to sit alone in the bar. So what you do is you order a hoe's favorite thing, room service. So, hi, this is Mrs. Hannan. I'm in room 512. Could you send me up a Caesar salad, please, and a glass of that wonderful Oregon rosé I've heard about? 512. Oh, sorry? Oh, you want to know if I want a 6 or a 9 ounces? How many liters in an ounce? Liters. Liters, that's how we measure wine in my country. Oh, you know what? Just send up the bottle, thank you. Oh, and could you tell the person to knock loudly, please, because I have hearing loss. Thank you, bye. Now, you know from experience that when that knock comes, it's either going to be so loud that you're going to go through the roof, or the message would have been lost and you get a tap, tappity tap. So what are you going to do? Audible, visual. So you could go and stand on your tippy toes. Well, I have to because I'm short. And keep your eye on the peephole so you're watching out for the person. This is not how I want to live my life. So what I do, I sit down at the desk and the chair, which always faces the door, and I look at that little strip of light underneath the door. You can tell if someone's there. And if there's 1 shadow, 2 shadows, that means feet. You go over, look out, and if that is your Caesar salad and a bottle of Oregon rosé, you're in business. Now, I would love to chat forever, but I do have a flight to catch. So I just want to say, traveling is indeed a pleasure. Hearing loss just adds a different dimension to it. But remember, as long as you understand your needs and you identify your needs and ask for them with confidence, the stress will be less and the joy will be more. So listen, I'm off, and don't forget to tell them who you are. You are a hoe on the road. Bye.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Awesome.
Well, that's going to be a hard act to follow. And as you, I'm sure, are enjoying, Gail, I am really happy you couldn't see the captioning on some of that. If you weren't funny, they were. So a hard act to follow, but we have somebody that's going to follow it beautifully. If you've been with us a couple of years, you saw Juliette Sterkens when we brought her to town about 3 years ago. Juliette is a remarkable woman. She is a retired audiologist, and more than that, she is a phenomenal speaker to anybody that's in the room. She is the #1 speaker for the Hearing Loss Association of America's loop proponent. So this is where you're going to start hearing a lot about hearing loops as well as other strategies. She goes all over the country, indeed all over the world, talking about hearing loss, hearing loops, accessibility. If you know a community that would benefit from her presence, just get in touch with her and she will work it into her schedule. You got somebody in South Carolina? She loves to go to South Carolina. So please welcome back to Eugene, Dr. Juliette Sterkens.
Take that microphone. So I get to follow this act, right? And I'm definitely not as funny as Gail. My goal is to get you a little bit educated about hearing loss, about hearing aids, what hearing aids can and cannot do, but that there are workarounds, and hopefully that will motivate you to kind of take some other steps if you have certain times in your lives that you're really frustrated about not being able to hear. And of course, the first one is masks, right? Masks prevent people from reading lips. Masks muffle the sound. The distance, the 6-foot distance, means that the sound is going to be quieter, and they make lip reading impossible. And that's been good for audiologists, they have exposed a lot of untreated hearing loss. A lot of people who thought they were able to get by with no hearing aids until people started wearing masks and they suddenly found out that they were really relying on a lot of lip reading. So what does it mean to have hearing loss? And this is Sherry Eberts, who said it beautifully, that hearing loss is like a game of Wheel of Fortune. You don't get to have all the letters or all the consonants, and you're trying to fill in the gaps. You're desperately trying to piece what you're hearing together in some kind of meaning and context, and you're trying and trying very hard. It can be very stressful. This is kind of what hearing loss looks like for some of you. So you're constantly trying to fill in the gaps. And for those of you who don't have hearing loss, this is a visual analogy. If perfect hearing looks like this, having impaired hearing may look something like this. And making that picture bigger, making that sound louder, isn't necessarily going to improve the clarity of the person with hearing loss. Anybody figure this out? High-pitch hearing loss affects the understanding of speech. But really, what's hearing loss all about? Or why don't hearing aids help people hear the way eyeglasses allow people to see? And that is because hearing aids only correct for about half of the degree of hearing loss. So I'm not going to get too technical, but if you have a 50 decibel hearing loss, I can maybe make you hear at 25. But if you have an 80 decibel hearing loss, you are still going to have a lot of residual hearing loss, even if you wear the best of hearing aids. People with hearing aids say that they can hear, but they can't understand. That when there's a lot of background noise in the room, hearing aids make all sound louder, right? And if there's a lot of crosstalk going on in the conversation, they're going to be left out because they cannot hear any of the conversations going on. So my message today is that there are workarounds, that there are things that we can do to help you hear better in very specific situations, but it may mean going out of your comfort zone a little bit. So you need to set the stage, and Gail set that up a little bit. And there we go. The first one is that it's really hard to hear when somebody covers their mouth. Well, forget about that one. We're all covering our mouth. And trust me, I have trouble hearing when people are wearing masks. If you are having or looking forward to Thanksgiving dinner, set the stage. Mom or Dad or Susie has a really difficult time when we're all talking at the same time. Let's try to keep conversation to one conversation so we can all hear. Of course, you also hear better when you face me, right? It sounds very elementary, but sometimes you need to spell it out. Sometimes you need to say it. If you have grandkids that you have trouble hearing, ask them to use their big girl or their big boy voice, right? That doesn't mean yelling, but they need to look at you in order for you to hear them well. For the spouses, now I had a mom who started every conversation with, say. Say didn't mean a darn thing, but it meant she who is important is about to speak. And my father, as soon as he heard the word say, would look up because, she was going to say something and it would be easier for him to hear if he looked. So getting attention first. Would you like a cup of coffee, Mom? Or if you say, Mom, would you like another cup of coffee? She may just have heard the announcement and then is going to be tuned in or keyed in to you hearing. And Gail already mentioned, there are now disposable masks with a little window that can sometimes make that conversation easier. They're not perfect. We sure wish they were. And I'm going to mention a couple of practical solutions. If you wear hearing aids, but you've never heard of the word remote microphone, you need to go back and talk to your audiologist. All right? And for the women out there, the remote microphones do not come with this really cute guy. I wish, but remote microphones can work, and they work in places where sometimes they can work in a car. And you may think, do I need a microphone in a car? Well, you bet. Even this distance, while you're driving, you can't be driving like this, so that little microphone can make a difference in the sound, right? Again, you need to talk to your audiologist or to your hearing instrument specialist. And these remote microphones, if you approach this guy, he will be glad to wear that microphone. You just have to remember to take it off his lapel when you leave the bus. But it'll guarantee that you'll be able to hear his announcement so much better. Now, if he has an Italian accent, he's still going to be hard to hear. There's all kinds of other accessories. And these are remote microphones. These remote microphones also have a telecoil built in. We're going to talk about that briefly. If you wear hearing aids from the Phonak company, they come with remarkable table microphones. They are costly devices, but they can make all the difference in being able to hear in a slightly noisier situation. And if you own a smartphone, the manufacturers now offer all kinds of apps on smartphones that allow you to customize, for example, your telephone control, or even change how the telecoil responds to sound in the hearing loop. And then there's some other options. If you've not looked at the captions on the screen, they are remarkable. No, they're not perfect, but if a person speaks very clearly, that automatic speech recognition can work remarkably well, and you can get it on your smartphone. This is one of the things, if you own an Android phone, Google Translate, it's Google Transcribe, has remarkable capabilities. I don't know if you're going to hear the audio. I took a little video. It didn't work. If you are in Italy and you speak English into your phone, your smartphone will also translate it into Italian. So this is a huge advantage. You got to practice with these apps to use them, but they can make all the difference. We used it this morning in a meeting, and I was looking at it, and it worked well for me too. And of course, then there's always the old standbys, paper and pencil. It's good to have paper and pencil in your purse to write some things down. And if you've not seen this handy dandy card, it's a real charmer. It allows you to tell the person before you have trouble, I have trouble hearing because of our masks. Would you please be considerate, or thank you for understanding? And it almost always starts a conversation about hearing loss. Now, we're going to be talking more about hearing loops, and Dr. Myers will talk a lot about hearing loops that are installed in places where we all want to hear better. But in order to hear in a hearing loop, you need what is known as a telecoil in your hearing aid. Now, right there is a photograph of two different hearing aids. One doesn't have a telecoil, and the other one does. Why would anybody ever want to buy a hearing aid that doesn't have a telecoil if it gives you the option of hearing in places where hearing aids are simply unable to deliver? So this is the device that has the T-coil, that one does not. It's a minimal difference, and I believe that every consumer ought to be given that choice and be educated about this choice. Now, how do you know if a hearing aid has a T-coil? It's got to have a button on the instrument. Although some hearing aids no longer have buttons, you got to do it with your smartphone. Not the best option for my 95-year-old mom. You do not want her in church messing with her smartphone. But, you know. And the nice thing about telecoils and hearing loops, they work the world over. Telecoils work the same way. The coil, in effect, picks up slight changes in the magnetic field, direct transmission of sound into the hearing aid, and the best thing is you can turn the microphone of your hearing aids off so there is no background noise. Some people say, well, my audiologist didn't recommend a telecoil in my hearing aid. Good news, you can get a remote control with a T-coil. It's not the best option, but at least we can retroactively make your hearing aids accessible in a loop. And believe it or not, some hearing aid manufacturers are now advertising that their smaller hearing aids do come with telecoils. So the hearing aid industry is responding to the hearing loop movement. And in a very simple graph, the loop here is installed in the ceiling. It's creating changes in the magnetic field that the telecoil in the hearing aid can pick up. Now, what if you go to the Oriental Theater in Chicago to see Hamilton and you don't or they don't have a loop? You go to the front desk and you ask for what is called an assistive listening device. It's mandated by the law. And the theater will ask you, do you want a system with a headphone or do you want a system with a neck loop? Well, if you have hearing aids with T-coils, you want a neck loop device. That loop, that neck loop, does the same thing as what this big hearing loop does, and it transmits audio wirelessly to the hearing aid, but you have to set it to T-coil. It doesn't go automatic. You got to turn that on by pushing a button. What if you don't wear hearing aids, or what if your hearing aids don't have telecoils? Then you can pick up a listening device, a receiver with a lanyard that you hang around your neck, and you ask for the headphone set. And for those of you who've never tried the headphone sets here at the shed, they are remarkable. You'll be able to hear performers basically lick their lips if they were to do that. Okay? So this is meant for non-hearing aid users. And assistive devices should be shown every time when you walk in the shed. You'll see this logo, and there's a T. The T stands for telecoil. If you walk into a facility where there is no T shown, that's your sign that you need to go to the front desk and pick up a listening device. They are mandated by law. Theaters and public places should be offering these devices when they use a PA system. So, where else can you use your telecoil? Well, on the telephone. That's why it's called telecoil, right? So for the older Ma-Bell telephones, but also for your iPhone, those iPhones create a magnetic field that the telecoil in the hearing aid can pick up, and that would allow you to make phone calls, because when you switch to T-coil, it turns off the background noise in your hearing aids. There's hundreds of live theaters that have loops, so if you're going to go somewhere, check out this list. And there is even a website that is trying to keep track of where loops are being installed. What's really exciting is that we are expecting a big announcement from Google Maps, and I'm hoping you can guess what that's about. But like Gail already mentioned, if you have trouble hearing and you don't speak up, nothing's going to change. You're going to go home upset. You're going to go home kind of frustrated because you didn't hear again. And you may stop going. And if you stop going, your spouse is going to stop going, right? So this is really a situation that you're hurt when you don't take that effort to speak up. Now, under the ADA, this is a right. You have a right to a reasonable accommodation, and I highly recommend that you join an organization called HLAA, the Hearing Loss Association of America. They offer Zoom meetings at this moment, and it's really been phenomenal. We're bringing in all kinds of people around the country with hearing loss who attend these meetings. Some of them have been taped, so you can watch them at your own time. You need to know that CART, captioning, live captioning, is also a right. If you're going to be in a court situation, you can ask for this. Okay, and if you like to go to Broadway shows, the Broadway community just started experimenting with something called Gala Pro. And Gala Pro broadcasts the captions to your own smartphone. And then they offer a little clip so you can have your smartphone right in front of you with the captions of the Broadway show. It's just if you're Dutch, like I am, you could also turn on the Dutch captions. I don't know why I would want to do that, but I mean, it's an option, all right? And if you want to know more about your rights under the law, there's a great webinar that was recorded not so long ago. And this is really my final slide. And it's that for hearing aid users, hearing access, assistive listening devices are like the curb cuts, are like the wheelchair ramps for people with hearing loss. And that's really the message that I'm trying to share with you, that there are things that we can do to help you hear better, but it may need you to go out of your comfort zone a little bit or start looking into that. And if you feel so inclined, you're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to try and help you via email. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, give me 1 second, Alito. A little while ago, a new employee at the city interviewed us about what's happening at the shed, and we talked a lot about this hearing loop situation. And she said, well, do you know Alito Alessi? And I said, sure. He started Danceability 30 years ago. He's a dancer, he's a dance instructor, he's a dance trainer. And this troupe was remarkable and known world-round because it's mixed ability and brought in all kinds of body configurations to enjoy and perform dance. Well, Alito is going very hard of hearing. He can't hear his music. He can't hear the student questions when he's in sessions. So we thought, we've got to fix that. Let's put a temporary loop on the stage and try it out with him and see what happens. So we came in, just put the music through the loop on the stage. You wouldn't have heard anything. Alito hears it. He starts dancing. You turn on the music in the hall, and his partner can start dancing. So it brings up that interesting question about ability and mixed ability. We're in this together. This is an inclusive community. It is a conversation between people, and I want to talk to my friends who have hearing loss, and I want them to tell me when I can't hear, because I have something really important to say. Now, Alito Alessi, please welcome to the stage Alito and Karen Daly, and enjoy a wonderful dance performance as a nice break. So Alita's danceability performances will get back in gear as soon as some of this COVID stuff is over, and I hope you will take the opportunity to see them and the whole troupe, because it's a big group. And I'm also hoping that we can help and figure out how he can put into his contract, or they call it a rider, when he tours, that he needs a hearing loop on the stage. And Gael Hannan could probably use that too. And maybe we can make up a little kit that she can take and just loop herself. It's that kind of creative thinking that has been such fun to work with on this committee. So if you want to join our committee and do some of that problem solving, that's part of the joy of this. We don't have all the answers yet, but we can keep sort of MacGyvering things. I have no idea how that came out, but but I want to give you now a really different perspective, I think. This is a wonderful woman. She doesn't remember me, but I sure remember her from 8th grade, her 8th grade, when she came and worked in my classroom to help my students and taught me everything I know about signing, which is this. Miss Jincy Schar Roberson, nice to see you.
Do I have hearing loss? Short answer, no. Hearing loss is really a medical term for an inner ear or nerve damage. Hearing loss is when a person isn't able to hear well as a normal person, as a person who is hearing. Yes, that's true. I'm not able to hear. But I was born deaf. And that means I had no hearing to lose in the first place. There are some pitches that I can hear. So loss, no, I don't identify as that person. I don't identify as a person with hearing loss. I identify as a person who is deaf, because I was born that way. I don't know why. I was born deaf. Do I use a hearing device? I do. I have one hearing aid. Does it help? It depends. Depends on the situation. So not always. You have to remember, when you use a device, devices don't always work. It depends on the individual. There was a time, I remember my daughters, they were yelling, and I was startled. I was like, what's up? What's going on? They just wanted me to get them something, some snack or something like that. Or they just wanted to ask me a question. But the way that my daughters yelled for my attention, it just startled me. It's like, what's going on? What happened? What happened? It was really not a big deal. And I was just like rolling my eyes like, oh my goodness. I can hear some sounds, but I cannot identify what that sound is. For example, I can't find my phone, you know. So they have these cool iWatches, right? And I didn't know that they had this alert that I could find my phone. So it's like all of a sudden I could hear this high pitch. I'm like, okay. So I click on this. I'm like, where is it? Where is it? And I'm hunting. I'm like, nope, it's not there, not there. And I'm looking everywhere. I'm like, oh, but I can't quite narrow it down. I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and my family is watching me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't find my phone. And they're like, it's right there. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. And then I'm happy. So for me, you know, I couldn't quite narrow it down. I could hear that high pitch, but I couldn't find it. I can't understand words. If you're talking to me, I don't know what you're saying. But I can hear the sound of these words. It's just muffled. I don't use the T-coil. I don't use the FM system. And I don't use the loop. For me, it hasn't worked. I have had an FM system during my school days, but you know, it doesn't quite fit me. And that's fine, it doesn't bother me. I accept the way I am. I accept the hearing the way that it is. And people will ask me, why don't you do this? Why don't you get the cochlear implant? And I'm like, you know, I'm not really interested, because I'm satisfied with the one hearing aid I have, and I can hear sounds, and that's enough. I'm satisfied, content. Do I enjoy listening to music? Yes and no. I do enjoy the feeling of the music, that bass, that boom boom. Oh yeah, like in my car, boy, you can feel that vibration. And my family, they like it too. They turn it up and we can feel that boom boom boom. I enjoy that. I can feel the music. But I don't understand the lyrics. It's the feeling I get. I remember in my college days, I was driving with my friend who was hearing, and we were on our way to church. And it just happened that I had this music on, and it was really loud, and I could feel it, and I'm just kind of rocking out, and we get into the parking lot, and my hearing friend said, "Hey, do you know what the music is?" I'm like, "No, it's cool though, right? Can you feel it? It's cool. I like it." And she goes, "Do you know that the word, what it's saying?" I'm like, "No." Mm-mm. And she says, and remember, I'm in a church parking lot, and people are looking at me and giving me this look. And she goes, "The words have the F word in it." And I was like, "Oh, click. Turn it off, eek." So that's just one example of, I just didn't know what it was saying, but I do like the beat. I do enjoy that. There was a time that my daughter, she was quite young, and of course she loved music, and she was sitting in the back seat. And I'm driving along, and apparently she was trying to get my attention. But she took her shoe off and threw it at me while I was driving. I'm serious. I was like, she literally took her shoe off and threw it at me while I am driving. I was like, ah! I pulled off the road, and I was like, what? What? Why did you throw your shoe at me? And she's like, "I just wanted your attention because I wanted you to change the music." I told her, "Don't ever do that again. Don't throw your shoe while I'm driving." And she's like, "Okay." I thought it was pretty clever, though, to figure out how to get my attention while I was driving. She just tossed her shoe. Other than that, really, I don't like music. I think it's boring. Honestly, I just like, You know, the violin or the clarinet or the flute or anything, to me, these are, I don't know, too high-pitched for me. It's kind of like you hear people talk about the chalkboard and your nails scraping across the chalkboard. Ugh, shrill. No, that's me. I don't like that. So those particular instruments, no thank you. You know, my mom, she used to play the clarinet, and I was like, oh, no. So I guess I'm very sensitive with the high pitches. I don't like that. My brother, growing up, he always whistled to get my attention. I'd say, shut up, don't do that. That's my name, not my name. Don't whistle. Because he knew it would get my attention with the whistle. Oh, drove me crazy. And guess what? My husband and my daughters, they whistle. I'm like, I give them the look. They know better not to do that. There was a time in the car with my family, and my husband had the music on, and I was like, ooh, I don't know, this music, this sounds horrible. It's awful. It's too high, I don't like it. And my husband, he looked at me this time. He gives me the look, kind of, he's like, quiet. He said, that was your daughter singing. I'm like, ooh. And I looked back. I'm like, sorry. Eek. I did feel bad, to be honest. That was that high pitch. It was just a little loud for me. And so I had to apologize. Do I travel? I do. And I love to travel. I don't have any issues at all traveling. When I'm with my hearing family, I just kind of follow them around, and you know, it's very easy, right? But I do travel alone. There was a time, this was before the pandemic. This was before mask requirements. I flew to meet my husband, who was in Boston at the time. And I'm not the kind of person to just go up and say, hey, I'm deaf, I'm deaf. I don't do that. I don't know. So what I did is when I got there, I looked for the gate. I just found the gate, matched it up with my ticket, and I might go up and say, is this the right place? You know, get the thumbs up, and then I'm fine. Just kind of wander around and stay right there and till I'm ready, and I'll watch the screen, and sometimes my phone will have the alert to let me know, hey, it's coming, it's on time, or if there's a delay or whatever. Sometimes I'll sit and I'll be watching somebody else and say, you know, point to my phone, are you going on the same flight? And they'll be, no, you know, or whatever. And they'll say, hey, you, oh, thumbs up, and then I'll go up and I'll go get on the flight. I'm not the one to be the first one in. I don't want to do that. I want to go when it's my turn. I just want to be treated equal, I guess. I don't want to, because of my deafness, it doesn't make me more special. That's just not me. Right now, currently, I haven't traveled, you know, with the mask mandates and all of that. I haven't had to do that. I don't know. I can't deal with the masks right now. I don't even want to travel with masks. I'm just like, I'm so over it. It's such a struggle with masks. Have to go shopping or whatever. Oh, it's just so frustrating. I have no idea what people are saying because you can't see their face. And I'm like, please just pull it down. And some can be really jerks, honestly. Some could be just kind of clueless about my situation. Or they don't know how to manage that. Like, it's like, just let's get a paper and pen, or let's just use gestures if that's all we can do. It's not that hard. Being deaf, it isn't easy. I do struggle, admittedly. I do get frustrated. I do feel discriminated against at times. I do get bullied. But I don't want that to get in my way. I'll show them. I'll show them what I can do. I want to stay positive. One time my dad I happened to see him tell my 2 daughters, life is not fair. And you know what? My dad was right. Life isn't fair. But I just move on. I'm going to find a way to succeed.
She was like that in 8th grade, too. It's rather amazing. One of the things that's really special about the last page in your program book is almost all of those, not every single one, but almost all of those places have been looped in the last couple of years. And I want to celebrate the Eugene Library that's just been looped in the, think about where you're not supposed to be loud, or that you want, libraries, pharmacy, checkouts. You really don't want everybody knowing what that prescription cream is for, right? You can loop those spaces so that they can whisper to you. They don't have to yell at you. Eugene Airport has got all of the desks and gate desks looped, and coming next will be the gate announcements. Cottage Theater's getting looped. We've heard from the Liberty Theater getting looped. And anyway, lots and lots of installations happening, big, small, personal, and our whole thrust has been loop your life. Tell us where you want to hear better. You're only at the shed 3, 5, 10 times a year. You got a lot of other time to hear. So our message has been take control, find out where you want to hear better. Let's figure out solutions. The next speaker is the reason we're here tonight, though, because he pretty much single-handedly, and he will say second-handedly with Juliette, but Juliette's because of him too, is Dr. David Myers. He has pretty much been the total instigation of hearing loops in America, and he's here to tell his story about hearing loops. And I'm so pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Geneva, and I'm so thrilled to be here to celebrate, to salute, and to support hearing advocates here in Lane County, which it seems to me is a model for many other counties in the United States. I'm so impressed by what you all are doing, and I'm just so eager to support it. My story began back in 1999 when I got new hearing aids that came with this little $2 telecoil part. I knew that it was useful for some things, like listening to landline telephones in a noisy airport. I could turn off the hearing aid microphones, and the telephone would communicate magnetically to my hearing aids, enabling me to hear just fine. I also knew that there at least theoretically existed in some places in the world the hearing loops that have been spoken of this evening. But it wasn't until I first experienced this that my life and attitude changed. And it happened at the Iona Abbey off the west coast of Scotland. As I sat there, sound reverberated around that ancient stone wall, and I could not hear a thing. I could not carve any meaning out of the noise until my wife noticed a sign on the wall indicating that this had a hearing loop that would use the telecoil in my hearing aid. So she nudged me to turn it on, which I did, and suddenly this crystal clear sound was speaking to me as if the voice were between my ears. It was like going from rough gravel to smooth asphalt. And by the way, that's the same experience I had here at the shed this evening. When I listen just through my hearing aid microphones, it's very hard for me to understand any of the words spoken from the stage. I activate my telecoil, and this voice is speaking from the center of my head. Subsequently, in my sojourns in the United Kingdom, where I've spent about 3 years, I've experienced this in many worship places, in many auditoriums, even in cathedrals. The program for the 50th anniversary of the Queen's coronation began by directing people to the hearing loop and advising them to turn on their telecoil. At a place like Canterbury Cathedral, where sound reverberates, I think I hear better than most normal hearing people because of the sound coming directly to me rather than reverberating. And then there's all sorts of ticket windows, like at the Tower of London, various train station windows, nearly 12,000 post offices, such as in St. Andrews, where I've spent a good bit of time. I can't hear that clerk behind that glass window, but thankfully, the hearing aid windows are looped, so her voice speaks directly into my hearing aids. Of course, here in the United States, as we've just had illustrated with plastic barriers and masks during the pandemic, we have this problem abundantly. And thankfully, here in Lane County, including at Eugene Airport, there are now more and more loop installations that can allow us to hear people on the other side of that barrier. All London taxis have hearing loops. A red light goes on in the back to indicate when the driver activates it, enabling the driver to hear the person from the back seat and those in the back seat to hear the driver. One driver showed me just a little pinhole in the dashboard where the microphone is located. London buses have hearing induction loops at the driver's station where you get on in case you need to communicate with the driver. Well, this was all pretty cool, and there are tens of thousands of hearing loops in the United Kingdom and in Scandinavia. And I thought, why do they get to have this and we don't here in the United States? We have gone a different direction with assistive listening through other systems that don't communicate directly to hearing aids. And so I decided to do a little experiment. There were some hearing loops in the United States, in New York State, for example, but I thought, let's do this in a big way in my community of Holland, Zeeland, Michigan. So we're about 100,000 people, and if it works, maybe it could be a demonstration model for other communities. Let's treat this as an experiment. So we undertook an initiative, and today I can tell you that essentially every worship place, virtually every public auditorium, and many other public facilities are equipped with hearing loops in my community and beyond. So the airport that I flew out of, Grand Rapids Airport, has a hearing loop on both concourses and at every gate area. So all the announcements are broadcast by the wireless speaker that's right inside my ear. The largest installation in the United States is just down the road at the Michigan State University basketball arena, whose 12,200 fixed seats are looped. Across the lake, under the influence of Dr. Sterkens, who is, believe me, a force of nature, some 800 plus hearing loops have been installed in worship places, auditoriums, and other public facilities. So as a result of this, it's beginning to spread to other places, including New York City. Let me tell you a little travel story. I was journeying from Lower Manhattan to dinner with my nephew at Columbia University, got on the New York subway that was supposed to stop at Columbia University, but it went right past. The conductor had been saying things, but of course I couldn't hear anything over the noise of the noisy New York subway. So I asked somebody next to me, what happened? I thought it was supposed to stop. And he explained, oh, there was an announcement that they weren't stopping at that stop tonight. You needed to get off at the previous stop and switch to the next train, and it would take you there. So I got off at the stop beyond where I was to be, and then I went across the street to a New York subway booth to get instructions on how to go back where I needed to be. Happily, every subway booth in New York City has a hearing loop, so I could hear just perfectly over the clatter. All new New York City taxis come with hearing loops. How do people like me and many of you respond to this technology, such as many of you are experiencing right here? Dr. Sterkens and a number of colleagues surveyed nearly 1,000 people who had experienced this technology and asked them to indicate how well they heard spoken word. From 1, I heard nothing, to 10, I could hear every word. And as you can see here, in non-looped environments, the average rating was about the middle of the scale. Very few people gave it an 8, 9, or 10. But in loop facilities, the average rating was about 9. Most people gave it a 9 or 10. They could hear just great. And in fact, they also, because the hearing is delivered and customized by their own hearing instruments, they can hear better than with those checkout assistive listening units that so few people take the initiative to locate and return. I just want to close by just sharing with you some good news that's happening here with our effort to transform American assistive listening to make it directly hearing instrument compatible in a very simple way that enables people, when they're having trouble hearing in a setting such as this, to simply push a button. That's all they have to do. For example, the best-rated new hearing aids, according to Forbes magazine, just a couple of months ago, both are coming with a telecoil option, including Costco's new product. Even some of the online hearing aids that are now beginning to be sold, and which the FDA is likely to approve for over-the-counter sales, are coming with telecoil. Some of them are not, and part of the work of our initiative is to try to persuade more of those new, cheaper online hearing aids to also have the telecoil option. As Dr. Sterkens indicated, it doesn't take much space, and it costs virtually nothing for this little magnetic sensor. Take a look at what's happening in New York City. It is amazing. The New York City Council has mandated that all new public assembly construction that's being done with city funds or all renovations must install hearing loop technology. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which controls all the transportation facilities in metropolitan New York City, is mandating hearing loops at all their installations, including all the gate areas of all the New York City area airports. But it's not just New York City airports that have this technology coming. It's a number of other airports that have embraced it, including parts of Eugene Airport right here in Lane County. Juliette Sterkens referred to the fact that our task force is working with Google. Google Maps indicates for various facilities what accessibility there is for people in wheelchairs. They are now going to add what accessibility there is for people with hearing loss if there is a hearing loop present, and that's the one and only technology which they will be identifying. And so they've added this, and we're now starting to feed data into this, and it will become more public before long. And finally, we have worked with the UX Access Board, which sets the standards that implement the Americans for Disabilities Act. And they have entertained a recommendation, and so far been very supportive, that mandates hearing aid compatible assistive listening, which basically means hearing loops, because that's the only way this happens, in all future US rail and subway cars. If all these things happen, and if there are initiatives such as what you have right here in Lane County, we're gaining momentum, folks, and there is it seems to me, much more than I envisioned 10 years or so ago, the real possibility of transforming hearing assistance in the United States and in Canada and making it more user-friendly. But if all this doesn't persuade you, or if you really aren't into hearing technology and you need something even simpler, my wife did find one other low-cost alternative in the Vermont Country catalog. It's just $9.95, and you can buy it. And I did buy it, and I tried it, but I'm sorry to tell you, it really doesn't work. On behalf of the Hearing Loss Association of America, which is the nation's voice for people with hearing loss, and which is encouraging on behalf of people with hearing loss, hearing loops across America, I again want to say I celebrate, I salute, and I fully support what you all are doing right here in Lane County. Thank you.
So as I said, we're going to have a little casual stage set. If you want to stretch or need to use the restroom, please feel free. I did not put in an intermission tonight, but we have one more really fun performance for you. And then we'll, if you want to stay and visit, we will do a Q&A panel and discussion. What we've learned is there's nothing like talking with your friends who have hearing loss about their hearing loss and about yours, and sharing what you're experiencing, because the brainstorming, the problem solving, the how to do the workarounds is creative. There's no one answer, and your friends are there to help. In fact, when Bill Barrett realized he was becoming very, very hard of hearing, you know him as a multi-award winning broadcaster in town and part of Radio Redux, Fred Kraft's wonderful vintage radio acting troupe. Mike Sanders over here, who's on our loop committee, and we sat down and thought, there must be a way to loop Bill Barrett. Let's figure out how he can hear his cues and hear the sound effects and be able to continue with Radio Redux. After a few moments, we figured out that just loop the stage around the actors, and Bill should be able to hear all his cues and the other artists. Fred Kraft says, "Oh, I've got hearing aids. I guess I better turn on my telecoil." So now Fred can hear. And then the guitarist says, "I haven't heard anything until now. I'm turning on my telecoil." So half of the troupe is using it now. And in fact, they're in performance as I speak over at the Holt Center. So I hope you'll go hear them later on this weekend as well. So now please welcome Bill Barrett and the rest of the troupe for Radio Redux for a really fun use of the loop.
Ready?
Yep.
You're on in 3, 2, 1. And now, the unfolding story of intrigue among the socially prominent families of Garish Summit. There, in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. As our action begins, Lady Agatha is staring thoughtfully out the music room window. Suddenly, she turns and speaks.
Look, there's a strange car stopping out in front, Rodney.
Oh, I wouldn't call that strange, Mother. Of course, I never cared for rally stripes on a Rolls Royce myself. However...
Oh, my word, Rodney. I didn't mean strange in that sense. I just never saw it before. And now, a strange man is getting out.
Oh, I agree, Mother. He is an odd-looking duck. Ears set too low.
Oh,
and
Rodney, you're such a dimwit. You never understand a word I say to you.
Come in. It's open. We're over here, in the music room. Back here, in the conversation pit, behind the Wurlitzer.
Quite a nice little place you've got here.
Why, thank you. We like it. We have 47,200 square feet here in the main house. Then the twins, they live over there in the annex, which has about...
Oh, shut up, Rodney. Whoever this man is, I'm sure he doesn't want to hear you recite a lot of boring figures.
You're quite right, Mother. Perhaps introductions would be more in order. I am the wealthy but spineless young executive, Rodney Murchfield. This is my dowager mother, Agatha.
Pleased to meet you, Miss Agatha. I've been looking forward to this moment. You see, I'm your long-lost elder son, Skippy.
I'm afraid there's been some mistake, you sleazy impostor. I am an only child and sole heir to the Murchfield billions. Mother, tell him you've never had another son.
Well, I'm just trying to remember. That would have been about 30 years ago, and there were so many events going on at the country club then, it's just hard to keep track of everything.
But, Mother, he's obviously feeding you a cock and bull story.
It's no cock and bull story, pal. I got proof. Look, here's a picture of me when I was 4, and Mom took me to see Santa Claus.
What does this prove? There's no one in the picture but you and Santa Claus.
Well, of course not. A guy wouldn't want his mother in the picture he was taking with Santa Claus.
Apparently, you take me for a complete fool.
Yeah, more or less.
Well, I'm on to your little game. You fortune hunters are all alike. You learn how my Grandpa Murchfield was exploring for oil in this godforsaken land in 1912 when he struck lead. It proved to be the mother lode, a rich vein of drab gray metal stretching as far as the eye could see.
Oh, knock it off, Rodney. You always tell that story as if you had something to do with it.
I'm sorry, Mother. I guess I get carried away with family pride. After all, he was my grandfather.
Well, he was mine, too. I remember he used to take me on his knee and say, Skippy, someday it'll be your job to get the lead out.
He couldn't have said that to you. He died before you were born.
Oh, really? Well, maybe I heard it someplace else then.
Besides, no one in this family would ever have a name like Skippy.
Well, maybe that's just a nickname. His real name could be something more socially acceptable, like Caldwell.
Mother, believe me, this man is a fraud.
Yeah, Caldwell sounds okay to me. Yep, no doubt about it. That's who I am, Caldwell Murchfield.
You see, Mother, you're playing right into his hands.
No, I don't think so. I always liked the name Caldwell, but no one outside the family could have known that. It's good to have you home, Caldwell. Now, Caldwell, come along and meet the family.
Mommy, I wish you would reconsider all of this.
Oh, I already know part of the family, Mom. Like, for instance, Rodney's ravishingly beautiful wife, Jennifer. I'd like to get to know her real well.
Later that same day, Miss Agatha is pacing the floor as her attorney, Bowden Pardue, arrives. He rings the doorbell.
Come in.
Where are you?
Over here in the bowling alley. First door on your left.
Right?
No, left.
Right.
Come on, Bowden, hurry up. Bowden, I'm so glad you're here.
I must say, you're looking well, Agatha, except you seem drawn and haggard, as if you haven't slept in days.
Oh, shut up. I have something preying on my mind that I need your help with, Bowden. A man has turned up here in Garish Summit who claims to be my long-lost elder son, Caldwell.
That's shocking, Agatha. We've known each other for over 40 years, and I always thought your weak-willed son, Rodney, was the only child.
Well, I thought so too. That's the strange part I don't understand.
Well, you're a fabulously wealthy widow who's inherited the world's largest chain of lead mines. That man's probably a fortune hunter.
No, I've encountered those before, but this chap definitely claims to be the son I never knew I had. So, of course, it's just his word against mine.
I'm sure that's not the case, but how can I help?
I want you to check out his story, Bowden. See if there's a birth certificate, look into hospital records, dig through newspaper files. Well, aren't you going to write down these instructions?
Well, I suppose I could if you like. The back of this envelope is blank, so I'll need a point on my pencil. Is there a sharpener around here somewhere, Agatha?
Over there, under the window, by the tumbling mat.
Ah, thank you. Back in a jiffy.
Oh, my stars, Bowden! What on earth are you doing over there?
It's all right, Agatha. Everything's being taken care of. There, shall we begin?
Well, first, I want to find out whether a birth certificate was ever issued for a Caldwell Murchfield. And then...
Just a minute now, not so fast. Let me write this down. She wants me to find out...
Oh, my word. How did a nincompoop like you ever get to be my attorney?
I don't know, Agatha. I suppose I could go look at the files at my office and see if I have any documents covering that.
Oh, don't waste any more time. Just find out if this mysterious stranger is really my eldest son. If he is, I'll want to rewrite my will to exclude my other boy, Rodney.
I understand. Incidentally, about this young man who calls himself Caldwell Murchfield, where is he now?
Rodney took him moose hunting. Caldwell had wanted to go to the bank and rummage through my safe deposit box, but Rodney insisted they go hunting first.
Were both young men carrying shotguns when they left, Agatha?
No, I remember that part distinctly because it struck me as strange. Rodney had a gun, but he told Caldwell to just carry a shovel.
Agatha, I think this is the makings of a dangerous situation.
Well, I told them that before they left. You can't bring down a moose with a shovel. But Rodney said not to worry. He said there's no space in the trophy room for another stuffed animal anyway.
I'm afraid this is no longer a case for a lawyer. I'm going to call the police.
Well, I guess the police couldn't botch things up any more than you always do. But will they hunt for those old birth records I need?
No more urgent matter is involved here, Agatha. To put this as delicately as possible, one of your sons may have slaughtered the other. Later that same week, Rodney, in his palatial office at the Murchfield Lead Mining Company, when his evil brother Caldwell enters, Rodney is counting paper clips.
527, 528, 529.
I don't know whether you've heard about it yet, Rodney, but Mother has made me vice president of the family business. Where should I put my golf clubs?
I really don't care. And I might add that the very idea of your being an officer in this firm fills me with disgust. 548, 549, 550.
Well, I'm not too crazy about having you here either. But since you're president of this outfit, I'll try to make the best of it.
You're missing the point, Caldwell. My whole life has been dedicated to Murchfield lead mining. Lead is in my blood. Now you have suddenly appeared as my long-lost brother, and I don't see that 30 years being long-lost qualifies you for an executive position.
Can it, Rodney? Now, here's my plan for changing our company's product line now that I'm a big cheese here.
Don't talk nonsense. We can't change the product line. This is a lead mining company. Our only product is lead.
Oh, shut up, Rodney.
Look, it's hard to branch out from lead, Caldwell. What you don't know is that we have made previous attempts to broaden the Birchfield product line with toy soldiers, fishing sinkers, all that sort of thing.
Well, that's been your whole trouble. You can't see beyond lead. So I've taken steps to get us into the big money. Thanks to my efforts, there will soon be a gambling casino operating on this very spot.
What in heaven's name are you talking about?
Birchfield Lead has taken in a new partner, Rodney. I've settled an old personal debt by merging us with Big Otto and the boys from Detroit.
I hope you're joking, Caldwell. Before I'd allow a thing like that to happen, I would strangle you with my bare hands.
I'm afraid the joke's on you, Rodney. You and our dim-witted mother.
Can lowly criminals fit in comfortably with the socially prominent people of the Birchfields? Perhaps we'll learn more next week when we hear Lady Agatha say...
No, I didn't write you out of my will, Rodney. You were never in it.
Next time, when we resume our story of decadence and intrigue among the socially prominent families up on Garish Summit.
Well, I'm going to ask our 4 presenters to come back up on stage and field, if you have questions. We'll spend a few minutes and then have them come back down, and we can stay a few minutes and visit afterwards. I know it's been a long evening, but I'll go ahead and come on up, and let's see. I'll give you, are you going to? You're here. Okay, you've got a mic. Great. So does anybody got a hot burning question you want to start something off with? Great. And you do have to use a microphone.
I'm wondering about private. You know, people our age and older, we spend more and more time at home anyway. What about looping a home or looping around an individual? Is that portable? Is that inexpensive enough for people to consider?
I can tell you just from my own story, and there's other technology that's very useful in the home too. My TV room is looped, and I did it myself. I just got a little amplifier that costs $200 and connected it into the audio output of the TV, and then dropped it to the basement below, stapled it around where I thought I sat above, and it has worked perfectly for 20 years, and it's perfectly reliable. And I listen with both the telecoil and the microphone on. So my TV is silent. If somebody comes into the room and watches it with me, I give them the remote and tell them to dial whatever sound they want, because it has nothing to do with the sound I hear. My TV broadcasts through my hearing aids, but I can also hear my wife speaking or the phone ring or the doorbell at the same time. So that's one in-home technology that I've found useful. But Juliette, you know of others.
If you use hearing aids, you can also get a TV streamer, as it's called. It's essentially a dongle that gets plugged into the back of your TV. Now, if you have grandkids, they probably know what I'm talking about when I say dongle. But that device will then broadcast audio direct to your hearing aids, either through a remote, like what he is wearing, or direct into your hearing aids. And this is really something you need to ask for by your audiologist. Get a demonstration. Do you use anything?
The device that I use at home is my cat, Nikki. So when her ears prick up, I know someone's at the door.
What else do you do for TV?
I didn't even know that was the question. So for television, I use what David does. I use the TV streamer and my cat, Nikki.
So we should acknowledge there's also Bluetooth technology that can connect a TV to hearing aids, just as my Bluetooth connects my phone to my hearing aids, plays music for me while I'm on the plane, or allows me. I mean, Bluetooth does wonderful things. Bluetooth cannot help in a situation like this, however, because it's private connection from a sound source such as a phone into hearing aids.
Yeah, but if you have trouble hearing your television, there are solutions. And if your husband doesn't wear hearing aids but also would like to hear Downton Abbey better, then you can also get a small listening device with earphones. And I also highly recommend that you turn on the captions on your television.
That's what I definitely captioning. So on TV, if you have a smart TV, I just got one last week. So the TV has captioning, and it also has that is provided by a third party, or it's been done afterwards, but also automatic, such as you're seeing here this evening, for streaming. When you're watching streaming, YouTube, Netflix, then you can get the ASR, which is automated speech, automated speech recognition. So different types, but captioning is my number one, frankly. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Wondering, beyond traveling in Wisconsin and New York and London, where else in the world can we go with hearing loops and travel?
Well, Australia for one, and I would say it's much more prevalent in Europe than it has been in the United States and in North America. But Scandinavia and the United Kingdom have clearly led the way.
But what I was trying to explain earlier is that, let's say you're going to go to a play in Chicago, even if they don't have a loop, you can still pick up an assistive listening device, and by law, it must also offer a neck loop device. And if they don't, you are able to file a complaint at ada.gov. And my email flipped up on the web earlier, or on the screen earlier. I'm happy to connect you with people who may be able to teach you how to effectively get communication access. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is advocate for better access. And I'm sure JC has situations where she wishes she had better access. And I would love to hear what she does when she is in a situation when she really needs an interpreter. How do you get an interpreter to come and interpret for you, Jincy?
Hi. Well, for interpreter situations, like for example at a doctor, they have to provide me one. I just ask. I request ahead of time. I say, please provide an interpreter for the doctor's appointment. And I work at a school district, and they do provide interpreters as well for me. If I need an interpreter if I need something for accessibility, I just have to ask and make that request. And I have agencies that I have contact with. I can give that information to them, and it's their responsibility to provide that interpreter for me. Because it is the law, it's under the ADA. It is necessary. And if they don't, well, then they can be in trouble.
Yeah. But the key is to ask for some type of accommodation. So if there is a place where you visit or where you like to attend, but you are unable to hear, don't stop going, but find a way to work with the committee here in Eugene to make that happen in the place that you like to visit.
Correct.
Yes, if you have a hearing aid that does not have a telecoil, how big of a deal is it to get that put in?
He's asking, what if you don't have a telecoil in your hearing aid? Is it difficult to get it put in? In some of the units that fit behind the ear, it cannot be added. In some rare cases, it can be added to devices that fit in the ear, but sometimes a remote control can be added and the telecoil is in the remote control, like the device that he's wearing around his neck. Now, it adds a little bit of expense, but at least for the time being, we can get you to hear in a loop. And then what I'm hoping for your next set of hearing aids, because hearing aids don't have eternal life, that you ask for, no, they don't, that you ask for hearing aids with a telecoil. And of course, my hope is that audiologists will give you that choice when you order hearing aids.
Thank you.
Jincy, we had a question for you. How many people in your world, your family, friends, co-workers, can sign?
That's a really good question. My family signs. My parents, they sign. It's rare, honestly, nowadays for parents, hearing parents to sign with their deaf kids. 90% of hearing parents with deaf children, only about 80% of those parents do not sign with those children. So, but my parents are the ones that do sign. My husband signs. My daughters, they sign. My coworkers, there are a few there, but not a lot.
Do they sign ASL or is it signed exact English? When I'm with you, it's very pidgin English.
It is ASL, yes. SCE is old. Let's move away from that.
I wanted to say one thing. Somebody talked about looping themselves. You see a lot of pictures of that little portable loop in your program book. That's what we work with when we have the sound advice meetings every second Saturday. We use that to show you what it feels like to hear a loop and actually see a loop, because it's invisible in here. You can't tell what we're really talking about. But we're also playing with that as a way of empowering you to take it to your doctor's office, to your lawyer's office, to places where they might not have a loop for you. But if you don't have some of these other devices, it's one way to make your world a little bit more accessible. Other questions? Just a sec.
Thanks, Ginevra. I feel like it's kind of like a wave. You've gotten some seeds started here and things are starting to grow in the country, and as businesses and locations want to serve their patrons and get these loops installed, how do they figure out installers? What's the way that locations, where do they turn if they want to have a loop installed, and is there a national directory of installers so that businesses across the country can get to work?
So there are lists of qualified installers, and one of the things you want to do is not just get bids from anybody, but get bids that guarantee performance that fits the international standard for strength and evenness, the quality of the output, and there's very well-defined standards. Happily, there is somebody right here in Eugene that is capable of doing that kind of installation, and maybe there will be others as well. What is your experience?
I've reached out to audio companies, and audio companies in Wisconsin were unaware that hearing aid users prefer using telecoils and hearing loops over FM systems. They basically were ticking off boxes in facilities. And once I reached out to audio companies, many of the companies sent employees for training, because you need to be trained to do good hearing loop installations. And I think my list right now has 12 loop installers in Wisconsin, right, although it's really about half a dozen who are very experienced. Right. And of course, the more loops they do, the better they get. But on his website, hearingloop.org, there is a list of vendors. So if you're trying to advise your parents who live in Utah or in Kansas or in Dallas, we can direct you to good installers in those states as well.
Anybody else? How about we have folks come down, we'll turn the lights up, and we can, somebody have one? No, okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is the start of a conversation. Thank you.